Darren, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure, Rick. Pleasure. Nice to see you again.
You too. You too. It's been a while. We saw each other back in 2013.
Yeah, 10
right?
years.
When we toured together.
We've got more grey hair since then, I think.
Yeah.
I certainly have, put it that way.
Well, that was a great time, and that was a great time for me to discover your band and to hear your music and to see what it was all about. And I first want to start out with asking you about your influences. Like, how did you get started in music? What got you into music to begin with?
My father is a massive music fan, and he seemed to have, as I discovered later on, that he seemed to have an eclectic taste, although he wasn't too enamored by my first musical discoveries, which are like, because bear in mind he was a classic, well, although it wasn't classic rock at the time when he was enjoying it, it was just rock. But he was into Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Queen. So that's the kind of stuff I grew up on. But initially, the first album I asked him to buy for me was a Culture Club album. So from his background, listening to rock music and guitar music, he wasn't too impressed with that. But he still bought me the album, which is great, really. He'd never tried to force his sort of musical tastes onto me. But I suppose just growing up and being driven in the car constantly because he just had the music loud. He drove fast and he had the music loud cranked. So it was just Sabbath, Purple, Rainbow, Queen. So in the end, I just started enjoying those bands, and he always used to take me to gigs as well. He's the big, I didn't really appreciate it at the time. I suppose looking back now, he was the one who sort of inspired me in a sense because he never played an instrument himself, so he had no musical capabilities, and he still doesn't, unfortunately, except an annoying whistle. That's about the only thing he can manage musically. But he's still always encouraged. So he's the one. So his Bon Jovi was the first proper band that I was into. That I just thought the reason I wanted to play guitar because I wanted to be Richie Sambora. That was when I was like about 12, 13 years old. So he got me my first guitar, and he got me guitar lessons, and he sort of always encouraged me. But as I started to get into different bits of music, I always found that any sort of new artist that I'd heard of, or that someone in school had said, "Oh, have you heard this band?" I'd always look in his record collection, and he'd have it. Whether it was Fleetwood Mac or like even a Malmsteen record. He wasn't a guitarist. I remember he had Rising Force by Malmsteen. Or he just had everything. He had a really open mind when it comes to music. I think even Traveling Wilburys I was brought up on, and like bands like that. That's how I sort of like their melodic sensibilities. That band is still that had a big impact. That I'm just realizing now just how much of an impact like things like the Traveling Wilburys had on me. But he had such an open mind when it came to music without him, forcing his tastes upon me. He was the one that got me into music, and from then in school I just sort of gravitated towards other people who like rock music. But yeah, I suppose my father is the one responsible for me picking up a guitar and listening and performing the kind of music I play now, I suppose.
That's great. It's always great to have a parent, be the catalyst for us getting into whatever we get into. But now, so you took lessons, and at some point, I'm imagining, maybe in your teens or whatever, you started learning those things that you listen to on the records, like from Queen or Deep Purple or Zeppelin or whatever. And at some point after that, you might have, how did you start thinking that this is the path you were going to take as a career?
Because the era I grew up was in the shred era. So once I discovered bands I suppose Whitesnake was one of the sort of more technical bands when Steve Vai joined. That's because I learned of Steve Vai, for instance, through Whitesnake. And then someone like a friend who also played guitar, because you end up if you play an instrument, you end up bothering with people who play instruments in your school. And then he said, "Oh, have you heard, David Lee Roth stuff?" And then that was it then. And that was it, that entire, for the first 10, because when I first had guitar lessons, when I was 13, maybe 12 or 13, he was a jazz guitar teacher. And he was trying to teach me how to read music, and he would teach me these jazz standards. I just hated it. It's just like, I don't want to learn this. This is rubbish. I just want to learn rock music. Show me how to play a lick, you know. But what he taught me in the end, you know, listen, you know, 10, 15 years later, after that time, I realized, and in fact, I hadn't, about 10, 15 years later, I remember going back to him for lessons. And I said, I now realized what you were trying to teach me. You know, I had little to no interest there, because what you show me a chord for? There's no finger tapping in a chord. There's no sweep picking in a chord. All I was interested in was techniques at the time. And that's to lots of guitar players and musicians' detriment who grew up in that era. And it was something that I had to solve when I was growing older, you know, because I realized, hold on, all I can do, I can't play any songs. All I can play is licks. So I'd just be learning bits and bobs of everything and never really put a song together. So I suppose it was when the sort of epiphany for me was when I went to, because I always wanted to master my instrument, always. I always wanted to be, I think I sort of got an inferiority complex as well. So I'd always, if I couldn't do something, I just wanted to learn how to do it. So I remember that I signed up to go to the Guitar Institute in London part-time. I was going to live down there and do it full-time, but I worked out that I could just do 2 days a week, travel back and forth from London, which is like, you know, 2 hours. And I realized when I was going down there specifically, again, just to develop technique and just be even, you know, that's what. But then I realized when I seen that these players, and it's like players similar to yourself, to be honest with you, Rick, who was masterful of a great rhythm technique as well. I thought, oh, I can't do this. You know, they're playing what this ain't actually that simple. And I realized that they were, you know, like rhythm and blues they were showing, like a jazz fusion stuff. I'm thinking, hold on, this is amazing. You know, this stuff is amazing. And there was no licks. You know, there's no techniques, but these people were masters. These guitar teachers are absolute masters of their instrument. Improvisational skills was unbelievable. You know, I was in awe of these people, and I just wanted to absorb as much as I can. And then that was sort of the beginnings of learning that I always sort of had an interest in composition, because at that time, once I discovered Frank Zappa, when I was like after, I think it was, would it have been before Mike Keneally or after me? But when I discovered Zappa when I was about 18, 19 years of age, that's when I wasn't that interested in guitar as such. I was more interested in composition then, because I realized what he was doing was just absolutely, I'd never heard anything like it in my life. This is insanity, really. This is absolute madness. These are not songs. These are just like it's like a stream of consciousness, you know, almost. But it's just so. But it wasn't, because the guy was an absolute genius. So I wanted to learn how to read music and things like that, and so I just spent my time learning theory. I remember just sitting. I used to sit in the office where I used to work with a metronome, just learning to count in odd times, you know, just doing to count in groups of 5 and groups of 7, and thinking, what do they with a pencil and things like that. I just wanted to learn everything about composition at that time. So, but like guitar wasn't giving me much when it came to that, because I didn't think I was particularly proficient in writing songs with the guitar, because you know, I'd only been learning licks and things like that, and I wasn't really interested in it. But yeah, it was the Zappa that got me into the composition side of it, and it was the Guitar Institute that made me realize that the guitar isn't technique and soloing and nonsense and all that. Whilst I can't pretend I don't value it, because I do still, but I think that's because just of my upbringing in a sense, and the era that I grew up in. But it made me realize that this is irrelevant. You know, you could do without all of this. You don't need any of this, really. It's useful to have, but concentrating and spending your time just learning lead technique, no one's interested. Neither are you interested. And you've got no reason. There's no musical context for any of this. If you haven't got a song, then what you're doing, learning all this technique, is nonsense. You're wasting your time. So it was their rhythm playing that I just became fascinated with, and I just dedicated the vast majority of my time, or at least with equal amount of time, to studying rhythm as I did lead. And that's what sort of got me into the composition. It was at that point that I started. I'd had written insane compositions using just computers and things like that. And just because I'd learned to score things, I was using just the MIDI. I was using like the staff view in like my DAW at that time, which was quite ancient back in like, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. So I was still scoring things in. But like Zappa was the one who influenced me into learning the craft of writing music and scoring music and understanding music. But then again, I always remember when I was about 16, 17, I remember borrowing money off my uncle to buy a Fostex 4-track in order to start recording ideas. So I think I was always interested in composition. I just didn't really know how to express myself because I didn't have the tools at the time.
But that's okay. You went through a period of growth on your own instrument.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that you started writing music the way you did, it got you to that point anyway. So no matter what vehicle took you there, eventually you got the inspiration to start writing your own songs.
Yeah.
And as we all know, you know, the more we do that, the better we get, you know, at doing it. So what I'd like to find out from you is, because everybody's process is different, what is the creative process for you from the time you get an inspiration for an idea to the time you record a song? How does that work for you? How does that show up for you?
It's tricky. I think I used to record, you remember the little tape recorders, you know, it was like a little Sony one, they were about that, so it was just room for one cassette and you could record. And that's what people used to drag around with them all the time to make. So I'd always record ideas on if I had a little riff or a little melody idea, I'd always be recording stuff. But like, I suppose these days the inspiration always comes from a riff of some sort. There's always, whether it's a guitar riff or a piano idea or something, or even a drum loop. There's always something that sparks the idea. An idea. If I know that there's a germ of a good idea in a riff, if I like something, I will work and I'll work on developing it. But a lot of the times, if I got a good idea, I will just let the tape run. So I might play the riff, for instance, and I'll just let it record, whether that's usually with a metronome or to a beat while it's recording, and I'll just see what happens on guitar. So I'm not a very good improviser in the sense that most of what I improvise is nonsense. But my only talent, the only talent that I believe that I've got is I can hear melody. So if I had a good riff and I just went on a vamp and see what came out, I'll listen back and I can always pick out things. I can always hear things within what I've just improvised that lead me to be able to construct a song. Or at least there's always an emergence of a song, or there is a grain of, you know, there's a thread there that I can latch onto, that I can develop a song. So even though like it's complete and for the most part it's nonsense what I've just improvised, but I've just got the only gift, like I said, the only gift I got is I'll listen and I can hear, oh, like there's another chord there, somewhere to go. Or it might be complete accident. Like, you know, most accidents are just, and you know, most great songs are written from accidents, I would have thought as well. Where I've accidentally hit something, oh, I like the sound of that, or it's just a wide variety of things that even like with guitar solos, I'll improvise something and it'll be really free, and I'm not thinking about it. I don't think about shapes, even though I could just improvise using shapes as we all do. I just let it go because no one's listening, so it doesn't matter. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'll let it go, and then I'll just pick things out. So I'll construct out of all the mess. I end up sort of, you know, tidying it all up in some way, shaving a bit off here, taking a bit there, taking a bit there. It's at a mess that I end up molding. So like all my songs are like that. They're just at a chaos until I mold certain bits, and then I might hear something else, and I might imagine something else. Then I can take it. But generally, the process is quite chaotic, and I rely on my ear, always my ear, to help me compose and identify threads of where I can take something. But the ethos for me has always been, ever since I started writing music, maybe from the age, where I seriously started writing songs. I've always wanted to make, my ethos was I want the song always to be interesting from start to finish, because when I was growing up, there was just tons of music where I just fast forwarded the end, or I fast forwarded, second verse because it was crap, or something. It was just a repetition. I really disliked repetition early on. I didn't value it at all. I just thought, I heard that. Why do I want to hear it again? And if I was a listener, maybe, if I want to hear the first verse, I'll go back and listen to the first verse. I ain't going to create another verse that's just like it. I want to do something different. So that was a lot of sort of schizophrenic way that I was writing at the time. But that's changed over the years. I see the value in repetition now, because I realized that it was on after we did the Mike Keneally tour in 2013. I think I was speaking to you before. In 2014, when we was just playing, we was opening for the Aristocrats, and I was playing a song called The Envisage Conundrum from that album, The Envisage Conundrum. And do you remember I was saying to you, like, when you're halfway through a tour and you've got your chops together and you're not even thinking about your parts, you're just playing and listening to what's going around you. And I was just enjoying listening to the song, but I imagined myself when I was playing this song out to the audience. And it was like, once I'd established one groove and I was enjoying it, I'd go straight to another groove immediately within, by the chorus. And then in the second verse, it'd go to another groove. And it was like, I remember thinking at the time as I was playing it, thinking, this wouldn't be I don't think I'd be enjoying listening to this if I was out in the audience, because I've just established a good feel. And then quickly bored of that. And that's the danger, I think, of writing using a DAW, for instance, in your house, is because you're going over and over things, you're listening over and over and over again to things, crazy things start sounding normal, because and that's what happened to me in the early years, is that I'd just be spending such a long time writing stuff and on certain parts. I get bored easily, and then I want to move to a different groove. And they're like, I'd be having 3 or 4 different grooves in a song. And it sounded normal to me, except, once you start acclimatizing, to newer music and things like that, like a year later, I listened back. I don't like a lot of the stuff that I wrote in the early years for that reason, is that there's not enough repetition, and it's chopped and changes. It's not that I regret those, because that's what I liked at the time. But like, I learned the value in repetition a little bit now. So songs are a little bit easier to write. And that's why a lot of songs these days are a lot shorter. I just still don't like to milk anything. If it's a good idea, I still don't like to just keep going on about it. I still think for me that I've tried to make a song interesting from start to finish. So that's why I always got like codas at the end of songs. Lots of our guitar solos comes at the end of songs, because I'm just always interested in writing in different formats as well. I don't really, because I haven't got a grounding in songwriting, and the way I used to, as I said to you, I learned music just in bits, just really bitty, and then getting into artists like Mike Keneally and Frank Zappa, who don't write normally anyway. Let's be honest, they don't write normal songs. They can, Mike Keneally got tons of great normal songs, but his favorite ones are the ones that just took you on a journey. But he was far more skillful than I for doing things like that. So,
but it was his journey as well.
Yeah.
Like his improvisation and his ideas, developing as they go. Which what you said earlier about becoming a better rhythm player, first of all, that's one of the main things that we use to write songs. It's based off of riffs and rhythm things that develop with us. But also, I love the fact that you said that there was a lot of improvisation going on, because that's sort of like playing. That's sort of like you play with what you have. You get as many ideas as you can down, and then from those you edit what you like and what becomes actually the song later. But that element of play is kind of important, because that's the only way you get there. The improvisation actually helps you get to that point.
It's strange, because like if you ask me, like I sort of revere really good improvisers, but I also dislike improv. In theory, I don't like improvisation at all. I always like to go and listen. I don't like listening to improvised solos, I like going and hearing solos from the record as a rule, and I do that in our live set. I always play the same solos because I never consider. I always think for solos there is an important part of the song for me. It's something I spent a long time on, molding it into a composition. It's a composition for me. A solo is, but like what I don't. But I say that, but everything in that song, every single thing is as a result of improvisation as well. So it's a dichotomy in a sense. It's sort of, even though I dislike it, everything is born of improvisation, everything. And if I hadn't, but I also think that I've got a good ear in order to decode, and like I said, in order to make sense of what I improvise. But without the improvisation, without freeing yourself, without just thinking, just go for it, and like there are some incredible moments as well. Like I think it's a lack of confidence as well. Why I wouldn't? You've got to be confident in your own, in order to like improvise solos and things like that. You have to have a lot of confidence in your own ability. You also have to have an extremely good vocabulary as well. That's really important, because there's no such thing as like, even though you're improvising something original, it's still born of things that you've learned over the years and things like that. It'll come out in an original way. But you've got to put the groundwork in. So like there's those people who've got an incredible vocabulary, I admire, and the confidence. I like listening to those kind of improvisers, but I don't like hearing it in a live setting because it's so throwaway. I want to listen to it again. I want the opportunity, weirdly, to listen to it again, because that's why I like to hear what was played on the record. But like I said, when I went to the Guitar Institute, and these guys were improvising, I recorded every single lesson on a little mini disc recorder. So I'd go back and listen to what they'd improvised. And it's honest to God, it gives me goosebumps even listening to it. These guys just improvised this. And it's absolute, the phrasing is beautiful. I wouldn't have appreciated it at the time I was listening to it, though, in the lesson. It would have been over my head. I wouldn't have appreciated it, because it's just, it takes time to process. For me, it takes time to process and appreciate music a little bit. But when I come back and I still got those recordings now, I used to learn what they improvised. I used to just think, this is absolutely astounding. And that's why I always sort of look up to like people who can improvise really well. Even though I might not appreciate it in a live setting, I still, what they're doing is just, it's absolutely wonderful. And like I said, it is really important, whether you're a shit improviser or not, as I am, and I mean it as well. I know, by my own standards, everything I've ever done is every single solo, every single song, it's all a result at some point, especially solos, but composition is tons of improvisation in it.
Will I get there with a pain? When I get there, what's the game? Then when I want to crawl away, I forget the rules you
essential to keeping music fresh too. So many people don't understand it because they think that maybe there's too much freedom, and they can't really hone in on one thing. But I think it's absolutely essential in respect to finding your own voice in writing, and and finding, like you said, cool things happen because when you're improvising, you're not thinking, you're not tied emotionally to something as much, because there's that freedom of, okay, whatever happens. And from that, you surprise yourself sometimes how soulful something is and how immediate it feels, and when you start to recognize that and fall in love with that, I think as musicians, we get better at finding those moments quicker.
Yeah, and like as you probably know, that the first take is usually always the best take because it's just imbued with the
Always.
sort of spontaneity and emotion. And I can't tell you how I've developed my own guitar playing as a result of transcribing something that I didn't actually play. So I might have it sounds like something I played. So I might have it might sound I can hear what I wanted to play or what I should have played, and then I learn completely new vocabulary as a result of transcribing something I didn't actually play but nearly played. So I learned techniques. I've learned techniques that haven't existed before, for myself. And just that's how I developed my own style by listening to, well, you know what I mean. I am going to original stuff, but I developed my own way of playing as a result of listening to, it's only like that's how you develop your voice when you're learning to play guitar by transcribing other guitar players and trying to work out what they do, and you incorporate that into your own playing. But I sort of incorporate my own stuff into my own playing because I hear stuff that I didn't actually play, but I wanted to hear and I nearly played. And I spend time transcribing that. And like all my so I developed my own sort of techniques as a result of doing that. So it's weird to talk about it because like I really dislike improvisation. That's the really crazy part. I really dislike to improvise. Yet it is absolutely vital to just be in a position to let yourself go. If you can do that, as far as I'm concerned, if you can do it in a live context, you're an absolute genius. Like, and there's tons of examples. Like you yourself, Rick, Mike Keneally.
Oh,
like,
thank you.
Guthrie Govan. I know, like everyone talks about Guthrie and his technical ability, but like
Guthrie's amazing. Guthrie is a wonder to all of us. Like as far as how much work he's done on the instrument alone.
Yeah.
Besides what he can do on the instrument,
It's the weird part is with Guthrie. Like I might not like all the music they do, and like I might not like all the Guthrie. It's not like a Guthrie's what Guthrie does is improvising. Everything he does is improv, and it's incredible. So like whether you like his music or not, it is at what he plays is heartfelt and genuine, because that's exactly what he wants to hear. He is he's a freak in a sense that he's listening, he's transcribing what he's hearing in real time in his head. It's this something. He's unique in that sense, but in the sense of being free and improvising, he's just one of many greats. That's the reason I look up to him, is that they're able to they have the ability to express themselves without having to spend hours working it out like I would have to. Sit there and this is how I'm going to express myself at this gig. With this solo I've written about 5 years ago. They can express themselves, as we talked about earlier, in the moment. And these people are in the moment. And that's the dream for any musician, really, to enjoy themselves in the moment and to create in the moment is something exceptional. And it's certainly not me. I am not in that category.
You do it though. When you say you improvise, you're doing it right there.
I am doing it.
Maybe not to the level that you want to do it, and maybe not to the level of, let's say Guthrie does it on a certain style or whatever, but we have to say that we have to clarify something also, that level improvisation comes from years of learning other people's music, learning parts, learning how to play rhythm, improving on all those things before you even get to the point where you could just sit down with the instrument and stuff comes out freely.
It's absolutely, and like that's why I still to this day, and I always will. I'll always practice. I still practice, and even if it's learning, even today, I'm just sat there. What was I doing today? Just learning, major 7, sharp 5 arpeggios, and flat. Just variety of different arpeggios. It's not because I want to learn how to, for technique reasons. It's because if I like the sound, try and find what things I like the sound of. And I just practice them. And then I'm hoping one day they'll pop out. And that's the only reason I practice. So I still transcribe, I still practice, and I will to the day I die. Because if I don't keep putting in information, I don't think anything new is going to come out. You still got to keep feeding yourself with information. And that, like you said, it is the ability to improvise, even though I don't think I don't do it. I do it. but it's as a result of all that practice you do, all the learning of songs you do, all the playing in bands you do. For that moment when you're improvising there, all of those things, they all get thrown out. And then it's my compositional skills come in then, where I just listen to what I've done, and then I see if I can make a song out of it.
That's so cool. Well, you've certainly written some really great songs, you know. I remember the first one I heard was Caught in a Bind live with you guys. And I just had this feeling of, wow, this is really cool. This is really different. This has got a depth to it. This has got a sound to it. This has got a style, you know, and then I started realizing that from tune to tune after that with you guys. But it all started with you writing this stuff, you know, and then I saw, you know, the changes from album to album, sort of, and the growth, if you will, you know, and until you got to, let's say, Convergence, that album.
Yeah.
The only album anybody would ask me to guest on vocally.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you did the backing vocals. I remember. Yeah, fantastic.
But yeah, I enjoyed that a lot, by the way. But songs, you know, from that album until you get to, you know, the later stuff, like, you know, the most recent thing that I saw was If I Don't Take It All.
Yeah.
That video.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the album again. This
is what a winner looks like.
This is what a winner looks like. I love that title. So, you know, so that progression from that time, maybe from 2013. Well, first of all, when was your first album?
I think it was 2010. We did an EP in 2008, 2009. That was the first original stuff we released. And then we did a full album with Brian Bella, funny enough, on bass.
Nice.
That's how I see. So I knew sort of like that's where it all ties in a little bit, because I knew of Brian again. Like as I said to you before, every member of Mike Kennedy, I knew all of Mike Kennedy's band. They were all my favorite musicians. Like Joe's still my favorite drummer as well, for instance. So when we didn't, like, the bass player that I formed the band with, he left after we did the EP. So I had to find a bass player, and I thought I'll give Brian a shout. And he agreed to do it. So he did all the bass on the album as well. So yeah, that's 2010. That was the first album.
That's so great. I got to hear that. I don't think I've ever heard that one.
Yeah, because I was enjoying. That's how I got to know Brian as well. Because he just, I enjoyed, because even though, like, you know, I looked up to him with Brian, I still had no problem telling him what to do. I enjoyed it. So he does take constructive criticism well, but like but that's what I'm saying. I don't really, when it comes to music, I had a vision. This is where even though you're my favorite bass player of all time, I want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. And I remember us having a discussion because he just did this Iron Maiden type. He said, "This is why, for this one track, I think it was on Nerve and Allure." And he said, "This is why." And he sent me what he did, and I just went, "No, I don't want to do it. I don't want you to double anything." He said, "Yeah, but it sounds great doubled." I said, "I don't want it doubled. I don't want it doubled," and that's that. Okay, listen.
Yeah.
So I won't get. So it doesn't matter how big a name someone is to me. Anyway, it's always about the music, and what he did on the album is fantastic. Anyway, he's an absolute genius.
Well, that's great that you have that vision, that concentration to say, okay, this is about this music. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And it takes also a humble enough musician sometime at a certain level to go, okay, well,
he's an absolute pro.
He's amazing, isn't
he? Yeah.
As far as that's concerned, he's got so much great musicality, and groove and command of groove and everything that it just, it always amazes me. And the 25 years I've played with him. it's always a joy.
And that's what I mean. He's got the technique and the groove, but one thing, and that's why I love the Mike Kennedy band as well, right? Is because every musician is technically adept in that band. Every single one is virtuosic. Every single one. Yet every single player plays for the song, and that's the most important thing. They always play for the song. There's no one standing out for the wrong reasons. And that's like true of, we're naming bands. That's true of a lot of virtuosic technical bands is that everyone wants their time to shine a little bit, and just everything is based around the song in Mike Keneally's music. It's already technical. It doesn't need to be any showing off as such. And you guys always played for the song, and that's why you're such a great band as well.
Oh, thank you, man. Well, I think that's the ultimate. That's a super kind compliment. Thank you. But I think that every musician should get to that level where they know so much music that when they come to play, they realize that they're coming to play for the reason of that song they're playing, or to serve that song, if you will.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of lucky in a way in that band, that everybody in that band loves music on a deeper level. Like there's reasons why we love certain things, and we all love the same kind of music, and we all love the same things about life too. So when we get together to play, it shows because we're all comfortable with each other, and we're all trying to lift each other up.
Yeah,
that's the goal. That's not and we're all heavy listeners. I've realized over the years.
Right. Yeah.
That's the main thing, is being able to listen and react.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
That's what the pros do.
Hey, Darren, I had a question for you. So with the advent of modern technology and digital audio workstations and all that, I know that a lot of the technology has risen to the point now where it's become so incredible that we find ourselves, during the process of creation, faced with a plethora of choices, sometimes too many, and I was wondering, do you find yourself overwhelmed with the number of choices that modern technology offers versus the normal way that you would just craft a song?
Yeah, I do now, weirdly enough. I didn't before, because I didn't use the DAW to its full capacity previously. So what I used to do, I'd come up with a riff, and I'd used to take it into rehearsal then, of this riff, and I'd used to sit with Steve or with Tom, who's our drummer now, and I said, give me a beat for this. So he'd give me a beat, and then I'd take it home, and then I'd load. So I'd play to, so he'd play that beat to a click. So I'd take that beat, and I'd also get him to sample every one of his drums as well. This is how insane, I had an insane process at this time. So we'd do that, and I'd bring it home, I'd load it into the DAW, to the click track, blah, blah. And then I start composing the song there. So I'd loop his drums or something like that. Although if I didn't like a beat, then I'd take, like a bass drum out. I might add a bass drum because I'd sampled all his drums. And then I would compose like that. So it was really, I was using it in a really basic way at the time. So to create a demo. So eventually I'd sing, I'd put the vocals to it. And I wasn't using any plugins as such. I'd got, a digital model, like the Axe effects I would use. But I wasn't using any like effects on my vocals or anything like that, any compression, nothing. It's just really basic. And I think I always thought maybe that's a poor way, or at least not taking advantage of what it offers. And so because someone said to me, so when when Steve left our drummer in 2015, after we did Emergent, when we was doing the next album, I was always concerned, thinking, I didn't have a drummer at the time, thinking, how on earth am I going to write music now for a start? So I found another drummer in the area. It wasn't our current drummer. I said, do you want to, I just want to record you some drums. And he just said, well, why don't you just use a sequencer? Why don't you just use something like Superior Drummer? I don't want to use that. This is how I've always done it. But like so since I started doing that, eventually, about a year later, I discovered BFD, the drum sequencer. So I started using. I thought, why didn't I use this before? Because I just thought that the drums wouldn't sound very realistic. I just thought I was of that era of like, listening to like sample drums. It was just rubbish. That doesn't sound like a drum kit. But now, as you know, they sound as good as good as a studio.
Oh yeah, I mean the
Incredible.
samples are fantastic. The authenticity is just amazing, man. I mean it's unbelievable, and that's one of the things that I run into a lot with my when I'm doing it, and I'm wondering if this is the same for you. Is I start editing on the fly instead of just like kind of like vomiting it onto the page, and then coming back and doing a sweep. I find myself getting down into the minutia. It's one of my pet peeves that I kind of have to let go. It's not very groovy or moody, Darren, I have to tell you. It's one of the things that we have to learn along the way. And I know that these are modern challenges that I don't think a lot of musicians from the past ever had to face. I mean, I know they didn't because they didn't have those tools then. So I know that it kind of colors the work, right, a little bit.
It does, and I think that you consider what those musicians like, in bands like Yes, they recorded these parts in the studio live, and like there's hardly anybody capable of doing all these. Even the most sort of virtuoso musicians don't record in that manner. We all do it piecemeal these days.
Yeah, it's like we're standing on the shoulders of giants. They used to build cathedrals, and now we're just looking at pictures, right?
Yeah, well, like after this generation of musicians, and I include myself, and I'm not being modest or anything, that we can't hold a candle to musicians that plied their craft in the 70s and early 80s, because these guys had to play. They didn't go in and just say, "I'll use a little lick, and let me overdub this quickly, and I'll do another." That's how we record. We go back in now. We can edit digitally, or we take that little bit out. Maybe we'll tighten this up, or something. We're using grid lines in order to just quantize the music.
You're absolutely right. There's definite advantages that we have nowadays that they didn't have. But one of the things I got to tell you though is especially with regard to progressive artists, I noticed that they've come around full circle. It's like they fully embrace the newness of, or the fact that it's like we're carrying on the torch now for a lot of these guys, and a lot of the people in our circle, with Keneally and you and my buddy Nick. And everybody, like, they're all these, guys that we grew up with and that are coming around saying, "Hey, this is great," and it kind of reinforces that, right? But you're right. I mean, they didn't have these luxuries when they were doing it, and they're the ones that made the standard. They're the ones that crafted the standard of that process, and it's an amazing thing to think about.
Well, like I said, they created, even going back to the Beatles, the things that they created in the studio and the production techniques they come up with. As you said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. All we've done is made a lot of those creative things that they came up with far more efficient and achievable, but digitally now. And I think I like it. I like having being able, like, for instance, like miking up a guitar cab, as we all know, is the biggest pain in the ass there is. It's a massive. No doubt. I wonder how many billions of pounds have been wasted in the studio just trying to get a decent guitar sound and getting the right mic, getting the right position of the mic. How many amps am I going to use? What part of the speaker am I going to put it on? It's never ending, and it's never I always remember sitting in the control room listening to what was coming back, saying, "This don't sound like my guitar. This doesn't sound like what I'm hearing." Yeah, because you're not 6 foot away from it. That's why what you're hearing. This is a speaker on the cone. That's why it doesn't sound like it. So, like, things like using digital modelers to record is fantastic. They sound exactly the same. They're better.
Oh, no question. Yeah, no question.
So, like, those kinds of advances in technology are absolutely fantastic. But then there's, like, you can write a song just by pressing a key these days, really. And I don't want to go down that route. I always want to try and make sure that you will lose the ability. Like, if you don't, as we talk about the improvisational skills, if you're just using, even it's like I don't know, maybe like a synth that's arpeggiated or something like that, or like a drum beat that just loops, or you can create music with doing very little, but then you won't create much that's original, I don't think, unless if you learn your craft a little bit. It's utilizing that stuff. Yeah,
it's kind of like a meeting of it's the meeting, the best of both worlds meeting, right? I mean, we want all the authenticity, all the technology that we can play with. But we still want to be able to record and create organically, right? And we want to be able to, like, draw this stuff out of our minds, and put it into practice, make it reality. But I mean, I've got to believe that everybody that we've been talking to, as far as yourself included, I know Rick, is we're all purists in that regard. We have to play, we have to earn it. We have to dig in the dirt for it. We can't just say, okay, here, press this button and look, I'm a musician now, right? I mean, that just isn't how it works in our world.
Well, even like with like digital plugins, and the wide variety that are available, I still find like I want to try and use them in creative way. And I love people who go in depth to these things and use them in creative ways, like even like creating just incredible reverbs or using delay in a creative way or anything. There's just, all the saturation tools. You can use, if you learn to use them properly, you can be really creative there. Because like there's even like in a lot of modern pop music, I quite like a lot of pop music, because there's some producers out there, it might sound clean and it might sound, different to what the kind of music you might normally listen to, but they're using like production techniques in a very, very creative way. And I find some of that quite admirable. And that's what I find inspiring, is thinking, how can I use this, like this reverb plugin? How can I create a new sound that I want to use? I'm hearing something and I want to learn how to use this. That's what we all did when it comes to, we're just using to learn these plugins as we use instruments. We might use something. How can I use this? I see them as little instruments, really, in a sense.
Yeah.
You can go too far. As you said, you end up tidying things up and just concentrate on the minutiae and just taking this little bit. Or should I just, how about leave it all fucking alone? Don't touch anything. We'll do that at the end.
Exactly.
Let's write the song first, right? And let's see how creative we can be with the plugins afterwards. But sometimes these little plugins can inspire a song. You can put a little preset on something you've recorded and think, what's that? And then you end up manipulating the settings and saying, oh, maybe I can create this. So there's some wonderful. I do like the advent of digital technology, and I think that I love those people who are using it creatively rather than just saying, pressing a button. Sort of thing.
For sure. I mean, and just because it's not our particular genre, it doesn't mean that there's not a skill set that's involved in the creation of that, that music as well. I mean, it becomes an art unto itself. I mean, it's eluded me because, largely because it's not the music that I listen to. And when I go to create it, it's like a muscle that you have to flex that just hasn't been flexed, even though you say to yourself, like, hey man, I'm a learned musician, I can play anything I want, right? And then you go, well, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I do need a little practice in this area, So
I find it's
just interesting.
You can hear, but like there is some pop music then, because I listen to a lot of pop music. I really like a lot of it, but then you hear some ways there's you've got the auto tune is a bit too perfect on there. Quantize those vocals.
Oh man, you can hear it. You can hear it. It sounds like a computer, right?
Yeah, you can hear it, and it is. And then it's like, do you know what? That's I think that's where I can't see AI. AI is going to have a massive influence, but on the same token, I don't think it's going to because even now you can create a perfect vocal track, you can create a perfect guitar, but you can tell when something's too perfect, it doesn't sit right with a lot of people. It doesn't work, unless you're on some kind of drug. And I don't mean that, like rave music, like dance music, for instance. That has a place. Like I used to listen to like The Prodigy, like I'm not on drugs, but there was a lot to it. I admire a lot about the creative process that they like creating those little drum tracks that they do. That's not pressing a button. They use
for sure.
They use electronic instruments. They use it in the same way that we use in our guitars, and they use it in a creative way and in an original way. So there's much to admire in things that don't involve playing an instrument, that that some creative thought have gone into. But I don't think you're all going to be fooled. You ain't going to be fooled. I can name a couple of different artists now where I know that this pop music is polished, their vocal track is too polished, their reverb's a preset. I can hear the preset. Do you know what I mean? I don't think people are going to just consume music like they consume chocolate bars. But then there's those who love music who are never going to be fooled by that.
And I think there's a lot. There's. I gotta say, man, there's been a renaissance. Because I think people have just, maybe what do you call it? It's like Muzak or plastic music, right? and it's just you get your fill of that, and you kind of the pendulum swings back to the other way. I think there's this real renaissance. I mean, it's manifesting itself in things like the resurgence of vinyl, for instance. Among the younger crowds. I mean, I can't believe that. I mean, you go into Best Buy and here's Abbey Road on vinyl sitting on the shelf. So I mean, there's that, and then and like you said, they're using these tools in very creative ways. So I think here at Groovy Moody, we like a little dirt in our music, right?
Yeah, it is because even like with like I've got like a suite of synths from Arturia with like Prophet 5 and things like that. But then I seen like I was watching a Radiohead concert the other day, and where they've got the actual analogs, they got the synth on stage.
Yeah, they go lo-fi. Yeah,
this is cool. This is cool. They make so it'll never die. You have the advent. You're never going to get rid of analog. It's never going to happen. For the same way as you said, like, who would have thought vinyl came back? I thought there was this natural progression to be clean, pristine music. Bullshit. It'll never. It'll never die.
Yeah, and I think for that we can be thankful, and that's why I think it has to have been one of the founding principles that drove us to do what we're doing now with the channel and everything, because I mean there's enough of an interest that for real music again that I think it's gonna it's gonna be a renaissance. People are gonna rediscover it. They're gonna go, why did we ever walk away from this?
I agree. They will always. It'll never die, and it's impossible. And no amount of technology. I think I love technology, and it's made life easier to create. But ultimately, true artists, and there's lots of them in every genre of music. It's not specific to our genres, or like whether it's prog rock or fusion and things like that. There's true artists in every single genre, and I think that they'll use the technology create. Even like things like I like Kendrick Lamar, for instance, and I like a lot of it because that stuff's really like that stuff. You should listen to it if you haven't heard it before.
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar with for sure.
It's like he's using like a lot of like sampled jazz piano stuff. Like he's using stuff and just. And like I always big fan of. I like a lot of rap music. I grew up listening to NWA, and I like because I like the attitude. It always reminded me of rock music in a sense. I love the attitude. I love the delivery. It's the rhythm of the vocals, and I always like those rhythmic groupings and things like that. I always find that fascinating. But like, and like the stuff that Dre used to come up with, like those beats and things like that. This is like, I would look down on that when I was growing up. I would look down and say, shite, electronic rubbish. It's beneath me. This is pick up an instrument, let me play drums or whatever. I would look at that and think, but I've realized over the years, hold on, these people are using these things as an instrument. These are really creative people. But then again, they're talking like a rap band, like a rapper with a real band behind them is fucking amazing.
No question. I know. Yeah. Well, rap bands with like real drummers are pretty amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. If you ever get a chance, watch there's a film, Dave Chappelle's Block Party.
Okay.
And he did. There's I can't remember, like Fugees were on there. Wide variety. All of these rappers with real bands behind them. It is absolutely magical.
That's awesome. That's great, man. That's fantastic.
I do want to just reiterate what both of you are saying, which is totally great. These tools that we have today, including even AI, I would say. Not that I have a lot of experience with AI, but the thought is that you could tell AI to produce a certain track in a certain way, and if you give it the right instructions, it'll give it to you. That is, incredible as an idea, but does it really produce the right thing? It was there really heart and soul put into it? Was there really a human element to it? Was there, to me, I don't feel like that's the case, especially if you were, doing the same thing on, composing with drum machines and strictly MIDI instruments. If you just input the information without giving it the instructions of how to feel it, it's not going to feel it, right?
Yeah. Well, like for instance, then that's a good point you made. Like, what if like it was an artist then, right? Just say, do you know what? paint me a fantastic painting, paint me a great painting of a landscape, and they would produce something that isn't a creation, is it? They haven't created it. How can you feel any pride then, or any value in asking somebody else to create something for you? I don't see why it should be any different between music and, say, something like art.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, and it's not just that, it's also like how it makes us feel. You know, forget about the art and what it means to the artists themselves. As a consumer, how are you consuming this art, you know? Which is why I feel like there's been a resurgence of vinyl and people recording on analog equipment and stuff like that, because they recognize that when they do that, it's coming out of a human experience, and it's more exciting and more real and more magical. There's something magical that happens with that just because of the human element. You know, just because we're able to put so much into it. That's just because there's so heart and soul. But along with that, there's magic that comes from the human involvement. You know, so as more people realize that, the less people will be threatened by the tools that we have. You know, and like what you were saying, Darren, I think that these tools should be there to help us be creative, not to make our art for us. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense for me. I've always been of that opinion that that's why I don't like. I have to consider myself as creating something rather than I wouldn't feel comfortable if I relied too much on technology. I wouldn't believe. I want to invest something myself in what I've created. And I just feel like cheating. If I'm being honest, it just feels like it's cheating. And I feel that I haven't, the same way as the reason I've practiced guitar is so I can express myself. And I can express myself honestly because I've put the time in learning to play. And it feels the same with, like, you know, even things like synths, you could argue. I would imagine it was a similar conversation, you know, years ago when synths came onto the scene. You didn't have to, we just, and, you know, without, you know, hard keys, you know, soft keys on a piano. But like even velocity is important on piano keys. You know, even when you're playing like a synth, it's important to have the velocity. So like you can, like a note pops up, dynamics is important. Like, and dynamics is it's difficult to emulate artificially, because like it's a really human thing to do. To just hit a string a little bit harder or press a key a little bit harder, have that note pop out. Do you know what I mean? So it's I think that's going to be difficult to emulate. Even if it did emulate it, even if it created a perfect emulation of something that I wanted to hear, and I found out it was AI, I would have zero interest in it. I couldn't give a shit whether I originally enjoyed it. If I found out that it had AI, I just wouldn't. I just automatically disregard it, and I would view it in a different light.
Yeah, it comes from a lot. I think it comes from a lot of the, you know, the supposition that AI didn't live everything that it learned. You know, the stuff that it learned, other people lived through and gave themselves to, like you said, invested themselves. Investing it, that's a really good paradigm or device right there. Is you invest yourself, you literally give of your body and soul when you are creating art from the ground up. You know, and AI doesn't have that ability. I think what AI, like you said, what AI has the ability to do is inspire us to greatness, right? Inspire us to make a better art. You know, until the robots become sentient, at which point they'll no longer need us. You know, so
well, yeah, this is the weird. The music is just weird. It's because I'm not spiritual and I don't share any religious beliefs or anything. This is the closest thing I've got to religion, in the sense that I got no idea why it does, like, while I listen to something, or what it does, why it makes me feel a way. I can't replicate. If I knew how to replicate how to feel this in some other way, I would. You know, if it came from cooking or something, like, I'd do it. But it makes me feel a certain way, and it's almost ethereal. It's even difficult, mystical in a sense, because there is no explanation for. You can identify intervals that, I like a major seventh. I know that does, but don't know why. I don't know why I'm drawn to such an interval or anything like that. It's still magical. And even though I don't feel very tiny percentage of the time I spend as a musician, I experience sort of these sort of feelings. The reason I continue is to grab hold of that feeling, just even if it's briefly, even if it's like, I'll get it when I've come back. If I improvised an idea or a riff and I go back and listen the next day and I like it, it's just magic. It's just this is magic. Something is impossible to put into words. And it's, like I said, it is a spiritualism that can be shared by everyone. Whereas, like, it might be a Christian or you might be a Muslim. That can only be experienced by a number of people who share your faith. But guess what? This music thing is universal. Everyone can feel it. So there's something really special about that. The fact that everyone in the world can experience this.
Wow, that's amazing, man. You just summed the whole idea of this channel and what we're trying to do, and the whole idea that it is a spiritual experience. I doubt that machines will ever be able to replicate what we do.
Yeah, screw you, machines.